It makes you feel a certain way, but it's good. It might leave some grime under your fingernails, but it's good. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dilly, and welcome to another edition of the Dilly Show. Today we're going to be moving a bit away from wrestling for a bit. I know the last two episodes were very wrestling heavy. We're going to be doing a album review here today. We're moving to music. I have a lot of different things that I'm interested in, music definitely being one of them. So we're actually doing an album review. This is a track by track. I've done a few of these in the past. I did Metallica's Saint Anger. I think I did Nirvana's Nevermind, all of which are on the YouTube channel. I don't know if those made it to the streaming platforms as podcast episodes, but they might have. But this is my track-by-track album review of Dirt by Alice in Chains. Now, Alice in Chains, one of my favorite bands of all time. I could never say they're not. They always have been. It's the kind of thing, like, once I started really getting into music, and grunge specifically, Alice in Chains obviously sticks out quite a bit. Even, like, going back to, like, where I first heard Alice in Chains, like, I heard Them Bones on Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Like, that was when I was a child, and I always thought, oh man, that song's kind of rad. Later on in life, I got into wrestling, of course. Tommy Dreamer used Man in a Box as his theme song, so more exposure to Alice in Chains. So they were a very easy band for me to get into. Once I got to like grade 5, I got super into Nirvana. They were like my main thing. In like, I'm talking, I was like maybe, how old would you be in grade 12? Like, or in grade 5? I think I'd be like 11 or 12, and I was just jamming to Nirvana. Nothing's changed there. They're still, I would say, probably my favorite. But Alice in Chains is definitely up there. I'd say Alice in Chains is likely at least in my top 10. Probably top 5, but I don't know for sure. I'd really have to go back and evaluate. I'd honestly like to think about what my favorite bands of all time are. It's not an easy question for me to answer because I listen to so much shit. I'm looking at my Spotify right now on my liked songs, because I don't use playlists. I think I might be a little bit weird for not using playlists. But my liked songs, which I just listen to on shuffle constantly whenever I'm doing anything, 4,988 songs. I have a lot of different music on my Spotify, and I listen to all of it. Like I said, on fucking shuffle. So I mean, I get a lot of stuff. Sometimes I do listen to full albums, and that's what I did with Dirt here the other day. I decided, I don't think I'd ever listen to it in full start to finish. Like, I've definitely listened to all the songs on the album, but I don't know, like, I didn't think I'd ever sat through and just listened to the entire album. Dirt's also an elusive one for me. For years, I've wanted to get Dirt on, like, vinyl or CD. I think I do have it on CD now. I don't think I have it on vinyl. I do have it on CD. I do remember getting it now. I also have their Tripod album. I don't think it has a name. It might. But it's their Tripod album. It has like the dog with 3 legs. I have the green tinted version, which is kind of rare, I think. I think there was a clear version, which is the most common. There's the green one. I'm pretty sure there's a purple one. I think the purple one's probably the rarest. But the green one is pretty rare. So I'm happy I own that. But like I said, Alice in Chains, one of my favorite bands of all time. Dirt, you couldn't really argue that it's not their most successful album. It definitely was. And it came out at such a time where the music scene was so rich, so you needed to stand out a bit. And they did. They did a very good job in doing so. But you gotta think, like 1992, I'm pretty sure there was like 1 week or 1 month in the 90s where like Nirvana dropped an album, Soundgarden dropped an album, Alice in Chains dropped an album. Like, I think it might have been September 1992. I'm trying to think of when Nevermind came out. I think Nevermind was involved in that spiel. Okay, Nevermind came out September 91. So this came out a year after Nevermind did. So I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaken about the whole... I thought there was literally like 1 week where like 8 of the greatest albums of all time dropped. I will get back into that. I think that could be a separate topic for a separate episode if that is in fact a thing. But either way, like 92, lots of good music was coming out. Lots of good music had come out, lots of good music was on its way. This was a time where, as a music fan, you were just loving it. Like, I'm sure life was great for a guy like me back then. I didn't exist back then, unfortunately. But if I did, I would have been having a great time in the early 90s. But yes, Alice in Chains' Dirt. This is an interesting one. I love the album. It's a great album. Lots of really, really good songs. But fuck, I will say, listening to it front to back makes you depressed. Like, it ruins your day. And it did. It honestly ruined my day. I love it. Like I said, I love the songs, but it's very depressing. It's very sad throughout. I'm looking on the Wikipedia here just to kind of get some pointers, some notes before I get into the tracks. So it says here, the album's lyrics explore depression, pain, anger, antisocial behavior, relationships, and drugs, primarily heroin. We'll get into that. Addiction, war, death, and other emotionally charged topics. That sums it up. It's very, like, if you're not mad for this reason, you're not mad for another. If you're not sad for a reason, you're sad for another. It's one of those kinds of albums. And, I mean, it's not a happy one. You're not going to be smiling much. So let's get into the track by track of it. So we're going to start off with track number 1. I'm going to make sure I do have these in the right order. I'm just going to pull up Dirt here on my... My brain, for whatever reason, decided to type Alice in Chairs. That'd be that if I ever make a band, it's going to be called Alice in Chairs, and it's just going to be songs about sitting. Okay, Them Bones is track number 1, of course. This is iconic. I think of flying a car through San Andreas while listening to this one, because like I said, this one was in San Andreas. I always used to use like the Dodo car cheat, just flying around, jumping out, having fun, and this song was always playing. It was always this, or Plush by Stone Temple Pilots, or Cult of Personality. Like, that fucking game had an amazing soundtrack, and that cannot be understated. Them Bones, a great song. I've definitely overplayed the song to the point where I don't love it anymore, I will say. It's a great song, and I mean, like, when it comes on, like, I definitely get, like, a nostalgia feel. I definitely get, like, oh man, yeah, Alice in Chains, fuck yeah. And I rock out. But I don't love it the way I used to, simply because the amount of times I've heard it. And I blame GTA for that, mostly entirely. That and my Spotify. One thing I guess worth noting, I do kind of want to look at the totals of streams that some of these songs have. Them Bones is nearing 200 million streams, which is huge. That's a big deal. Let me see here. Yeah, it came out September 29th, 1992. But yeah, Them Bones, it's very badass. It's an absolute classic. Like I said, every time I hear it, it's like, that's Alice in Chains, that's Them Bones. It's like a grunge staple song, as are a lot of others on this record. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of big songs on this record alone. There's definitely a lot that kind of flew under the radar to a degree, but I mean, some of the all-time classic grunge songs are found on Dirt. So, I mean, great. It's a very brooding song, of course, if you've heard it. It makes you want to fight someone. Like, when this song comes on, it would be a good entrance theme, I think. Like, for, like, a wrestler, or even, like, an MMA fighter, just coming up to Them Bones. Because, like, that would hype you up. That would hype the crowd up, and you would be ready to beat someone's ass. So Them Bones, great song all throughout. Not perfect. Like I said, I've definitely overplayed it a lot. I'm giving Them Bones an 8 out of 10 on the Dilly-ometer, I guess we'll call it. Track 2 is Damn That River. Dirt has a lot of songs that feel the same without sounding the same. That's going to be a very repeated topic. Every song on Dirt feels like Dirt. Like, it feels like the album. I don't know how to really explain that. Like, there's a lot of albums where the songs very much differ in, like, theme and tone and, like, sound. Dirt's not really one of those. They all sound pretty similar. Damn the River, obviously solid track. I love the harmonizing vocals between Lane and Jerry universally. That is obviously, I would say, probably the best thing about Alice in Chains. Just the vocals are like the absolute greatest thing. Obviously the hard-hitting sounds are amazing as well. But like when I look at reasons that Alice in Chains really stood out, they could have stood out based on their sound. Kind of. Like I said, a lot of good music happening in that time period, so I mean, lesser, like, maybe couldn't stand out as much, but the dual vocalists is, like, just peak. Like, more bands should do that. I know nowadays, and I say nowadays, they've been doing it for, like, fucking 20 years at this point, but, like, Linkin Park does it, and they do good. Like, they're good. Emily Armstrong's good. Go watch that video on the YouTube channel where I talk about Emily Armstrong and how great she is. But yeah, Lane Staley, Jerry Cantrell, that's his name. They do very good on the vocals here. Every song they do great on the vocals. There are definitely some songs where it's like Jerry's song and some songs where it's Lane's song, and you can kind of tell, and I kind of note them out here as well. But this is like a solid, like they're both there, both ripping shit up, having a great time. Damn That River gets a 7 out of 10 on whatever my scale is called. Track 3 is Rain When I Die. They turned the brooding up a notch a bit with this one, and it's going to be a recurring theme. The chorus is absolutely beautiful. Like, I love the way the chorus sounds, and I do want to take a moment to say Lane's voice is so different from anything else in music at that point, and any time between, like, now and then, and before even. Lane just sounds different. He is a very different kind of guy. A lot of it can be contributed to drug use, because he was very heavy on that, but he also has this emotion that you don't often get with other artists, and it's really the kind of thing, like, it's, you couldn't manufacture it, basically, is what I'm saying. It's very authentic. He's like screaming from his soul in a way, and it's beautiful in a way, honestly. There is a lot of drugs that have to do with it, and that's fine. That is what it is. But it's beautiful. I love his voice as like raspy, trashy, redneck, white trash as it is. I love Lane's vocals. Jerry is like all around great, but Lane's just different. He hits so different. Rain When I Die, great song. That's another 8 out of 10 for me on the scale. Number 4 is Down in a Hole, and this is easily one of my favorite tracks off the album, if not one of my favorite tracks by Alice in Chains of all time. The somber tones clash very well with the heavy wailing in the chorus here, and it's a sick, near perverted love song, but it fits really well on the album. The lyrical content is interesting, as are, you know, all the lyrics from these songs here, but Down in a Hole is twisted. It's lovely, it's scary, but it's very nice at the end of the day. There's a beauty within the something. There's a beauty within the pain, I guess you could say. Down in the Hole gets the highest rating yet. It gets a 9 out of 10. Let's go with that. Next track is Sick Man, and when I started this review, I realized I've like never heard this song before. I think I have it on my playlist, so I must have heard it at least once or twice. But like, Lane's vocals aren't great in this song particularly. There are some parts where it's fine, but there are parts where it's almost like unbearable. It's definitely a bit of a sleeper song on an otherwise near perfect album, but like, it's a strange one for sure. Listening to this album in a front-to-back format, like I said, I found myself getting a little bit sick of the whole death and moaning vibe. This is about the time when that kind of kicked in, and it continues throughout the rest of the album. The first couple tracks are kind of like a bit lighter, a bit more okay, but like once you get to Sick Man, it's like, oh no, this is what I signed up for, isn't it? This is dirt. When writing this, Lane told Jerry to write him the sickest, darkest, most fucked up, and heaviest thing he could write, and he did a good job. I'm just not really a fan of the outcome. This one track, Sick Man, gets a 5 out of 10, lowest ranking so far. And then, we got Rooster. Literally, one of the greatest songs of all time. This is the highest charting single on the record, and that is for good reason. Here we get another blend of like beauty and bleh. Like, it's done in only a way Alice in Chains can do it, and it's so hard to describe. And like I said, you couldn't manufacture it if you tried your damn hardest and had a million people working on it. Wouldn't work. So one thing about this music video is one thing about this song is it's a war song, and the music video portrays that well. Rooster was Jerry's father's nickname while he was serving in Vietnam. So obviously death, mourning, those themes work very well with having a father who was in the war. So if you think about it, this is basically a theme song for his father, because his father, like I said, his nickname was Rooster. Here comes the rooster. He's singing about his dad, basically, and it's beautiful. Like I said, a lot of the songs on this album are very painful in a way. Like, they're very emotionally draining, but they're beautiful at the exact same time. Rooster, like I said, classic song, one of the greatest grunge tracks of all time, and it gets a 9 out of 10 here on the Dillyometer. The next track is Junkhead, and as the title implies, this is another one that is primarily about drugs. Knowing Lane died of a drug overdose makes a lot of these tracks more trudgy. I don't even know if trudgy is a word, but he was suffering, as were a lot of musical artists, especially back then, at that specific time. So it's definitely kind of hard to listen to songs like this that are just entirely about drugs. Like, this song, like others on the album, glorify drugs and speak from the perspective of a junkhead in this case. Like, he's speaking as someone who's going through what he's writing about. And it's depressing. Like I said, there's a lot of depression here. I'm sure these songs were probably the easiest to write, like, mid-binge. Like, I can just imagine juicing up and then, oh, this is how I feel. Let me write a fucking song about it. And, I mean, you could really let those specific artistic juices flow, I guess. But, I mean, the only person that truly understands an addict is another addict. So it's not really something I relate to, and therefore it doesn't really sit well with me. Especially knowing that Lane died of a drug overdose. Like, it kind of makes my skin crawl a bit. For that reason, Junkhead gets a 6 out of 10. And then we are on to the title track, Dirt. Now, you may say, we are 8 tracks into this album. Why is Dirt the 8th track? It's a strange choice. From my research, I understand that the label organized the songs differently than the band originally intended. Why they did this, I don't know. I'm assuming it was for flow, but it's universally understood that Dirt would have been the first track of Dirt, which makes sense. That's normally how it goes. But no, it got moved to 8. I mean, there's kind of a reason for that, I guess. The song itself, you get a typical medley of drugs, murder, suicide, and drugs. It's a typical Alice in Chains Dirt song. Well, the instruments play at a very sluggish rate, mind you. This track is just sludge. Like, this song, not the song, but this album is very, I guess you could say, instrumental for sludge metal. It really catapulted Alice in Chains in that direction, towards sludge metal instead of just grunge. I may sound like a harsh critic, but this album does drag on a bit when listening to it, in a way. In the way I'm doing it, specifically, it drags on. Like, this track was kind of hard. I love Alice in Chains, but I strongly prefer listening to their songs track here and track there versus the entire album back to back. This is another one that it really amplified that feeling for me. And for that reason, this song gets a 6 out of 10 on the scale. The next one is Godsmack, and that's not to be confused with the band that did I Stand Alone, because that's a thing. Godsmack just kind of used the same name. But here's the thing. Alice in Chains did not invent the term Godsmack, because the term Godsmack is a fancy term for heroin overdose. Let's go, it continues. Before I decided to make this review, I didn't realize how heavy on drugs this album was. I didn't realize it was basically a love letter to heroin. Maybe I would have decided against it, if I knew that was the case. I definitely knew there were those kind of themes in the album, but I didn't know how heavy it was in all the songs. This one's literally heroin overdose, the song. But yeah, I'm not, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of classic tracks on this album, but I'm not huge on the sluggish, I'm high off my gourd songs. This one gets 5 out of 10. That's really all I got to say about it. This next one is called Untitled. There's kind of a few different names for it. It's a 40-second interlude, but it gets brownie points for not mentioning heroin. It's a good thing. It's also a bit interesting, as I said, because it doesn't have a set name. It's known as Untitled, Instrumental, and Iron Gland, seeing as Iron Gland is the only word that is spoken. But it's not listed as Iron Gland on Spotify. Anyway, it's just called Untitled. I can't really give it a rating, because like I said, it's just an interlude. It's interesting. It sounds fine. It doesn't mention heroin. It's good. The next one is Hate to Feel, and this is one of 2 songs written solely by Lane on this album. Fun fact. Some of the lyrics are very questionable as a result. I'm going to read off some here. So enjoy this. Pincushion medicine, plastic man, paper face, and eat my cake, lick my plate. Alrighty then. Overall, this is not the worst track on the album, but it would rank pretty low, and it gets a 7 out of 10 for me. Next, we are on to the final 2 tracks on the album, and these are some of Alice in Chains' heaviest hitters. We have Angry Chair at track number 12, actually. No, I was about to say 11. Track 12, Angry Chair. This is amazing. This is also solely written by Lane, but it has much more character than the last one. Honestly, I think my favorite thing about this track is just the way that it sounds. I know that sounds pretty vague, but the guitar at the opening is very unique, and it sets the tone right away. The vocals also, of course, they always stand out, but the vocals are very different in this track, and I looked into it. I found out while researching, there's 16 vocal layers in this song. 16 of them. 16 vocal layers in the song, and it's crazy. They are all kind of at different tones and different melodies. I don't know whose decision that was, but it makes a fucking trippy ass song. This one is what I think heroin feels like. The rest are just describing it, but I think this is what it feels like. As for the themes here, it comes down to Lane's childhood. It's mainly a childhood anthem for Lane. His father used to put him on timeout in the angry chair in front of a mirror. That was a thing. There's also references to adulthood being a corporate prison, which is accurate. And, you know, this is up there as one of my favorites of all time on the album of Alice in Chains' discography. Whenever this one comes on, I vibe to it hard. It's not just about drugs. It's nice. This one gets an 8 out of 10. Simple. And we are on to the last track on the album. What I will honestly say is my favorite Alice in Chains song, as I'm sure a lot of other people say. This is Wood. This one takes the cake and licks my plate. This one's written about Andrew Wood from the band Mother Love Bone, and that's why it's called Wood, because Andrew Wood. Wood died of a heroin overdose. Yippee-ki-yay. This song circles it like a fucking vulture. It explores themes of making mistakes you can't take back, and it makes it extremely relatable, even if you're not like a drug user, because it's just the kind of thing, like, oh, I fucked up. I can't go back to the way things were. I messed up. I mean, it's definitely like, in terms of, oh, I shot way too much heroin and now I'm gonna die. But you can take it and make it mean something more than that. You can relate it to your own situations, basically. And that's kind of an interesting thing to do in a song like this, and it works pretty well. Because not everyone can relate to heroin use or overdosing, but everyone's made mistakes they can't take back. And that's definitely a good thing to make a song about. Good thing to write about. It's good. The song brings me back to summer days, driving with my friends, and I love it for that. I used to go just driving, nowhere in mind to go, just driving around with my buddies, just listening to songs like Wood, and in the meantime by Space Hog, and Mayonnaise by Smashing Pumpkins. Like, this song brings me back to a simpler time, and I do very much appreciate it for that, and it will always get a high rating based on that. So with that said, Wood by Alice in Chains is the first and only song to get a perfect 10 on this album review. Now, that was Dirt. I will say there are a lot of songs that you could probably deem skippable, but there are also a lot of songs worth repeating over and over. Like, if I were in a rut, I may find myself listening to some of the more sluggish, self-loathing tracks, but on the flip side, if I'm in a fine mood, I'd happily go and listen to Rooster or Wood or Them Bones. Like, this album's far from perfect, but it's very solid, and it's looked at as a classic album for a reason. It came at a time that the music scene was filled, like I mentioned. There were other stellar acts and albums, but Dirt stands out, and it still holds up. It's still, it endured the test of time, I guess you could say. I would almost relate this album to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I don't know why. but I definitely get that feeling. It's a fucking trip to get through, but by the end it all comes together, as does Fear and Loathing in a way. Even if it doesn't make the most sense, you know, there's definitely some parts of it that it's just kind of, hey, I'm high, how you doing? But, like, overall, it's good. It makes you feel a certain way, but it's good. It might leave some grime under your fingernails, but it's good. I know Dirt is looked at as their Nevermind in a sense, like it's their biggest, most commercially successful album, but I think I will have to revisit Alice in Chains at some point in the future for another album review. I do look forward to doing more of these reviews in general, and I know that, like, it's good. I love doing album reviews, because music is definitely, like, I listen to it all the time. It's one of, like, my main hobbies, my main things that I enjoy doing. There's wrestling. There's music, there's movies, I'm a fucking buff at all of them, know everything about all of them. So I definitely look forward to doing some more album reviews here on the show. More Alice in Chains maybe in the future. We'll see. They're great, I really do love them, but sitting through this one as a whole was a little difficult. I don't know what Facelift's all about. I mean, I know a lot of songs on it, but I don't know if it's just about drugs. Maybe. There's a lot of good songs on that album, though. Same with Wood, or not same with Wood, same with Dirt. Great. Oh, the Tripod album's just called Alice in Chains. Oh, okay. Got it. Just Alice in Chains, self-titled album. Alright, well, that was my Dirt review. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments section below. If you're on the podcast platforms, let me know what you thought. Somewhere. There's probably comments allowed. If you don't want to comment, feel free to hit me up. That was a weird way to plug my socials. Don't hit me up. Or do if you want. If you really want to have a discussion, I'll have a discussion. Follow me on my social medias at This Is Dilly. That's my main one. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I don't use Twitter much, but I use it a little bit. If you want to reach out, do it. I'm not on Blue Sky. I am on TikTok because it's not banned anymore. It's a good thing, I suppose. What else? I'm gaming. Playing Minecraft still. I have so many episodes in the backlog, so if you like Minecraft and want to watch me play it, go to Dilly Plays, youtube.com/@DillyPlaysYT, or might just look up Dilly Plays, it'll come up, I promise. What else am I doing? What else do I got going? I'm writing a book. I've talked about this book so much, because I've been writing it for 5 years. I'm really working on finishing it now, hopefully. Want to get that published. Want to become a published author. It's funny, I shit on this album a bit for using drugs. The book that I'm writing is about drugs. Anyway, I guess I'll wrap it up here. Follow the socials, do as you wish. Book coming out sometime soon. We'll see. Love you guys very much. Thanks for listening and watching once again. I've been your host as always. What am I doing with my hands? This is Dilly, signing out.